After my husband died, his kids said, "We want the estate, the business, everything." The day I buried my husband, I buried 27 years of my life with him. The church in Savannah was silent except for the low hum of grief. I stood beside the casket of Theodore Whitmore, the man who had built Whitmore Logistics from a single truck into a shipping empire that stretched across 3 states. I was not his first wife, and that mattered. From the 3rd row, his children from his first marriage watched me like I was an intruder at my own husband's funeral. Graham Whitmore, 41, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Leela Whitmore, 38, perfectly composed, perfectly cold. They barely spoke to me during the service. But when the last guest left and the sympathy flowers were being loaded into vans, Graham finally stepped forward. "We want the estate," he said flatly. "The house, the company, everything Dad built." Leela added, "It belongs to us, not you." Not even a week had passed. I remember staring at them, wondering how grief could turn into greed so quickly. But maybe it had always been there. That night my lawyer, Everett Caldwell, came to the house. He had handled Theodore's contracts for years and knew every clause in every agreement. "Miranda," he said gently, "you do not have to give them anything beyond what the will states. Theodore updated everything after the accident 5 years ago. You are the majority beneficiary." I knew that, of course I knew that. The estate included the waterfront mansion in Savannah, to commercial warehouses, investment accounts worth millions, and controlling shares of Whitmore Logistics. If I fought, I would win. The kids filed a challenge anyway. They claimed undue influence, claimed I manipulated their father during his final years, claimed I married him for money. The whispers spread through town fast. Younger second wife, older wealthy husband. Classic story, they said. Everett begged me to countersue. "They are trying to destroy your name, Miranda. If you stay quiet, people will assume they are right." But something inside me was strangely calm. "Give it all to them," I told him. He thought I was in shock. "Miranda, please think clearly. This is your future, your security, your home. Give it all to them," I repeated. When word got out, even my friends looked at me like I had lost my mind. "Why would you surrender everything?" they asked. "Because sometimes winning looks different than people think." The court date arrived 3 months later. The courtroom in Chatham County was packed. Business partners, distant relatives, curious locals. Graham looked confident, Leela looked triumphant. Their attorney laid out their argument dramatically. Theodore Whitmore was aging, vulnerable, swayed by a much younger wife. Everett presented the will, signed, witnessed, updated legally. Then the judge looked at me. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you intend to contest this challenge?" The room held its breath. "No, Your Honor," I said calmly. I agreed to transfer the estate, the business, and all related assets to Mr. Graham Whitmore and Ms. Leela Whitmore. Gasps echoed. Everett closed his eyes in disbelief. Graham smirked. Leela squeezed his hand. I signed the preliminary agreement that day. People whispered as I walked out, "Poor woman, she is broken. She must not understand what she is doing," but I understood perfectly. The final hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. That was when everything would officially transfer. And that was when the truth would finally surface. The morning of the final hearing, I wore navy blue. Theodore always said it made me look uncheckable. The courtroom felt heavier than before. Graham and Leela were practically glowing. Their lawyer carried a thick folder, already prepared to celebrate victory. Everett leaned toward me one last time. "Miranda, this is your final chance to withdraw." I smiled softly. "Trust me." The judge reviewed the settlement. All assets of Whitmore Logistics, all real estate. All liquid accounts tied to the estate. I signed, Graham signed, Leela signed, it was done. The kids smiled at each other, already whispering about restructuring plans and selling one of the warehouses. Then their attorney began flipping through the attached documents included with the estate transfer. His expression shifted, first confusion, then tension. Then something close to fear. He flipped faster. "Your Honor," he said slowly, "may we approach?" The judge adjusted her glasses. "Is there a problem, counsel?" The attorney cleared his throat. "It appears that along with the assets, the beneficiaries are assuming full liability for all corporate obligations, debts, and pending investigations tied to Whitmore Logistics." The room fell silent. Graham frowned. "What debts?" Everett finally spoke, calm and precise. 2 years ago, Whitmore Logistics expanded aggressively. New trucks, new facilities, leveraged financing. Theodore personally guaranteed several high-risk commercial loans. Leela shook her head. "Dad never mentioned debt." "Of course he did not," The attorney continued reading. There are outstanding loans totaling $28 million. Additionally, there is an active federal audit regarding shipping compliance violations into states. Murmurs spread across the courtroom. Under the signed transfer agreement, all assets and liabilities are now solely the responsibility of Mr. Graham Whitmore and Ms. Leela Whitmore. Graham's face drained of color. That is not possible. The company is worth more than that. On paper, yes, Everett replied, but liquid cash is minimal. Most of the expansion was financed. The waterfront mansion had been collateral. The warehouses were collateral. Even the company vehicles were collateral. I finally stood. Theodore told me everything before he passed. He knew expansion was risky. He hoped the market would recover. It did not. Graham stared at me. You knew. Yes, I said quietly. And I also knew that if I kept the estate, I would inherit the debt. Leela's voice trembled. So you just handed it to us? You said you wanted everything. The judge confirmed the transfer was legally binding. As we exited the courtroom, reporters who had come expecting a scandal instead got a different headline. Whitmore heirs inherit multi-million-dollar debt. Graham tried to speak to me in the hallway. You trapped us? No, I replied calmly. I honored your request. I walked down the courthouse steps lighter than I had felt in years. What no one in that courtroom knew was that Theodore had also taken out a separate life insurance policy years ago. One not tied to the estate, one that named only me as beneficiary. It was enough to start over quietly in Charleston. The kids got the empire, I got freedom. And as their lawyer had learned the hard way, sometimes the fine print is louder than victory smiles.